Hello and welcome to Plugging Along, a stream dedicated to LOTRO plugins. Last time on Plugging Along, we cleaned up some MinstrelBuff translations for French and German clients. Before we could release a patch, however, we found some more existing issues related to localization. And today we're going to revisit MinstrelBuffs to fix those issues. First with saving and loading data, and also looking into why codas aren't being detected in French. So advanced warning, in order to switch client language, you have to completely exit out of the client and restart. So you're going to see that at least once, possibly multiple times as we're switching back and forth to try to figure out what's going on. As always, feel free to jump into chat with your thoughts and questions. Squirrel says, good afternoon. Glad to finally catch you live. Well, I'm glad to have you here. I hope that you're interested in localizations and translations. All right, let me go ahead and switch over to my desktop view here. And here we have the to-do file, which is located in the MinstrelBuffs directory, which is reminding us of things we wanted to do. So, first of all, we have, when switching between English and German clients, the saving location for Windows don't persist. And we saw why that was at the end of last stream, and we'll review that here. And also, French codas just seem encoded wrong in the language file. And so that led me to say, well, I don't actually know how they're supposed to work in MinstrelBuffs, so we should look at that on the English client first, before we go over to the French client to figure out what went wrong. Okay, excellent. So first of all, for those of you who do not know, plugins are available in the plugin manager. You can reach it with the little caret menu, system, and plugin manager, or you can just type /plugins space manager. Either way, you'll get this plugin manager window, and it'll show you the plugins that are on your system. I, of course, only have the MinstrelBuff plugin because that's what I'm working on today. I'm going to go ahead and load that. And because it's in its default position, it shows up in the upper left-hand corner. I can go ahead and hit my moving shortcut, which is Control/, and move it on over here, because that's where I'm used to looking at it. Chromite says, does it track more than 3 anthems? Because if you start off in yellow line and pre-buff there, then switch to blue, you can end up with double Anthem of the Third Age, Anthem of War, Anthem of Composure, and Anthem of Prowess. Age, yes. I probably said aid. So, yes and no. Right now, MinstrelBuff has fixed frames. And so there are a number of fixed frames that you can use for MinstrelBuffs. You can see them here, but what might be even easier is if we come on in to Windows Explorer in this case, because I'm on a Windows machine, but I'm going into Documents, Lord of the Rings Online, and we're going to go into Plugins, MinstrelBuffs, and in the MinstrelBuff window, you'll see a Themes. Resources, sorry. So it might be easier to preview these in a graphics editor, or it might be easier just to look at them in game. I wonder, can I open this in anything but a new image manipulation program? Let's see. I bet MS Paint is not going to like a TGA file. Oops. Or I could just drag it to my other desktop. That'd be great. All right. Yeah, MS Paint does not like that. Paint.net might. Let's take a look. Or Paint 3D. Sure. This is a program I do not use at all, so I'm just guessing. Nope, it didn't like that. So I would use a GNU image manipulation program for this, or I would look at them from within the game. So I've already got a GNU image manipulation program. Oh, Chromite says Paint.net should handle it. Do I have that? It would seem like I don't. I've got Paint and Paint 3D. Once upon a time, I thought that sort of was a standard, but if it was an option, I guess I turned it off. Great, let's see if this was a good idea or a bad idea by opening up some of these. So, drag bar, Anthem background, what are you? All right. Oh, that's not going to be pleasant. All right, I'm going to change my mind. Chromite does say paint.net is third party. Once upon a time I had it. I just never used it enough. Okay, so we can see right now we're using Windows Standard. So if we have fixed anthems, let me go ahead and drag this into the more middle of the screen. Hopefully that's pretty easy to see. Maybe not with me right behind it. So if you have fixed anthems, it'll show you each of the possible anthems. Although a problem with this is that the images are back before a version of the anthem revamp, so you still have some anthems in here that are just not correct. Let's see, can you even hover over? Maybe? I thought I must have hovered over a bear in the background. So this is the fixed anthems, and in this case, yes, if we updated it to have the current anthem selections, then it would show you all the anthems possible. But it'll have gaps in there when you don't have those anthems up, and I'm not sure I like that. And also, if they are a fixed position, then it's not really telling you which one is going to expire next. Now, most of the time, I'm trying to refresh them kind of at the same time so that they all have the same expiration, but that may be suboptimal. Maybe it's better to, only every 30 seconds have to do an anthem. You also have the no window mode. I don't know what's different about that. Oh, it's supposed to look like that. Okay. Where it doesn't have that window around the outside. All right, that's not terrible. You have smaller anthems, no anthems. You got them all in the single line. Neat. Put the anthems on the bottom. Oh, no window. Nice. That's okay. Small fixed anthems. So what I would like to do in my copious spare time is to take the standard layout and just optionally add on chunks of it if you get more anthems, right? Just extend the window temporarily and then squeeze it back down to 3. 3 is a reasonable default width because a lot of times you have access to 3 and also you need room for the 3 ballads, so why not? But yeah, I would love to just dynamically say, oh, there's a 4th one, okay. Make that wider for 4 for now until there's only 3 and then slide it back down. You know what? Let's add that to do items. Dynamically expand. Which one is this? Window standard. If there are more than 3 anthems to display. Now, all thing about this is that the whole intent of this display is to show you when anthems that you can rebuff are going to expire. It's a little less useful to tell you about anthems that you pre-buffed with but now can't do anything about, except to show you when they're going to expire. I guess that could be useful. No, something is about to expire, watch out guys, is a thing you could say, I guess. I think it would be neat if there were a way to say, this is something you can rebuff versus this is something you can't rebuff. And we could do that by looking at your trained skills. But that's also maybe change display of anthem if player does not have it trained. They can't be the one to rebuff it. I think that'd be neat. Yes, Chromite says, remember that Minstrel anthems are raid wide, absolutely. Minstrels are bestrels, that's just one more reason why. My thought is I primarily use MinstrelBuffs as I should do something. And I like the idea of being like, no, that's not a you thing, but you might want to shout it out to say, Anthem of Courage is about to go bye-bye, or Composure, or whatever. So I like the idea of graying it out or otherwise changing the look and feel of an anthem that you can't do anything about. So those are two changes that I would really like to see. Now, I don't know, but I suspect that you can get multiple, say, Anthems of Wars. Can you get more than one Anthem of War if you have multiple minstrels, or do those not stack? Because that would be one of those, well, you can rebuff one of them, but not the other. And then maybe, do we track which one is which? Okay, Chromite says it overwrites. Excellent, so you just take the strongest one. So that would be another question of, technically, you could refresh this, but you can't because it's not yours. I don't think there's a lot to do with that. Ignore buffs that someone, or ignore anthems where someone else's edge case, where anthems, where an anthem is from someone else. Anthem you're trained in is from someone else, and theirs is more powerful. I'm not going to worry about that right now. Chromite says might not even take the strongest one. I think it does. I have been in groups, now that I think about it, with other minstrels, and had that thing where MinstrelBuff was showing me like an Anthem of War, and I would try to refresh it, but the timer would not re-up because it's going off the effect list on my person, and LOTRO knows that mine is not high enough to re-up the thing. So even though theirs might have 5 seconds left and mine would be better than nothing, I can't do anything about it. I could do it after theirs is gone, but as soon as they do it again, they'll overwrite me, I believe is how that works. At least for the one that has effect. I just get overwrites whether or not person's traits used for legacy. So that's a whole other, like, that's an edge case to an edge case. But I think we could definitely dynamically expand a window. That's super, okay, I should pause and say, not say super easy. That is super doable. And we can definitely tell whether or not the player has an anthem trained at all. So, you know, this is something that is possible for you to re-up, maybe. And for now, I'm not going to worry about that one. Okay, so I think those are really some neat ideas. Maybe we'll get to them today even, but if not, you know, I play a minstrel primarily. I'm seeing a little lag on my system. I would like it to not be lagging. Just going to go ahead and minimize a window or two. Oh, I don't need you open anymore. I primarily play a minstrel for my day-to-day LOTRO experience. And so the more time I spend on MinstrelBuffs plugin, the more that just directly makes my life better. So I definitely don't mind digging into it and doing little things like that. Because every once in a while, yeah, I get that edge case where I have more than 3 anthems as well. Now the fourth one will show. Let's see, can I do that easily here? Maybe. Hang on. So if I go ahead and switch over to this stance, do I have anything spec'd out? All right, let's spec there. All right, so if I go ahead and launch this anthem, it shall last 2 minutes, good enough. And we'll go ahead and move it out from behind that window so we can at least see that that's happening. And let's go ahead and switch back over to Redline. He said, optimistically, come on. Great. That Cry of the Chorus is going to come back here in just a second. 5 seconds. Fantastic. So, one of the side effects of how this happens is the icon for the 4th anthem does show up, but the timer bar just cuts off where the window ends. And so, you know, these are always sorted chronologically. So the one that's going to expire first is always farthest to the left. The one that has the longest time is always farthest to the right. So in a way, if you have a 4th one here, visually, it's a bit annoying. But practically, I know that that anthem of, composure, is the least of my worries. Because by definition, it has a longer expiration time than the anthem of the 3rd age. So Obviously, this could look better, but from a practical standpoint, it is telling me information. It's telling me I have Anthem of Composure, and its timeout is even longer than the timeout for Anthem of the Third Age, which is currently 2 minutes. So, you know, if all you're worried about is that occasional fourth one, then know that that is how this works. It always sorts them chronologically first, and then puts the soonest to expire at the leftmost spot. So I know that, oh no, Anthem of the Third Age is about to expire, and it's the next thing to expire. As soon as it does, everything slots into place, and we're back to looking like it usually does. Like so. So that is a thing, right? All right, let's go ahead and take a look back at my to-do file. Now, obviously, I do not mind getting sidetracked. I get sidetracked all the time, but this is nominally where my focus is today, is this language stuff, because if I can sort this out, I'll go ahead and release a patch now and worry about the graphic stuff later. Unless the graphic stuff seems really simple when I start to look at it. Okay, so when switching between English and German clients, save file locations for Windows don't persist. Well, that's a funny thing. Why is that? Well, let's take a look. I'm going to go ahead and launch the plugin manager and just keep it running here because I'm going to go ahead and unload and reload multiple times. MinstrelBuffs, like many plugins, will only save its save file when it is being unloaded. And this happens either when you hit unload all or when you log out. That basically hits unload all for you. And so if you are looking for the save file to change, you have to remember to unload your plugin unless your plugin does something special. Some plugins will write out a save file at certain times. For instance, the deed tracker plugin, I went ahead and wrote in a special case that says sometime after you have successfully completed a deed and the deed tracker found that and registered it, it'll go ahead and just write your file out, because I think we've all been in that situation where it's like completing deed, we've completed dozens or hundreds of deeds today, and something went wrong with the client, right? I got disconnected, my plugins didn't get to unload properly, and I didn't want that to happen to anyone, especially back in the days when you had to manually click these things off. There was no import from the plugin companion. And so it was just start a timer when you complete a deed, and after 10 seconds or so, write out an updated file. That way, if you're completing multiple deeds in a row, we don't like write a file, but we still get the almost live updating of the refreshing of that save data. Okay, that being said, let's go back into plugin data, and we can find the MinstrelBuffs plugin. Let's load that up and take a look at what we've got here. So we've got a couple of things. I'm going to go ahead and reorder these. The order doesn't really matter, except you do want to make sure that if you move something from the final position, it's not going to have that trailing comma. You're going to have to put that in there. Otherwise, when the game tries to load the file, that lack of a comma in the middle of this table structure is going to be bad. So we're going to go ahead and make that and resort some stuff. Let's see. Soliloquy position X, Y. That's also the soliloquy stuff. So conceptually, this is kind of what I sort the options into. Positions for the main window, positions for the soliloquy, is the soliloquy window even used, and a couple of other generic things. Now, if I save this and load, everything's fine. It unloads, it all gets rewritten semi-randomly. So don't worry about the order in this file. The order doesn't matter, and in fact will change between different saves. If I go ahead and load and unload again, it might change again. It didn't change that time. Oh well. Okay, so what's the problem here? The problem is these numbers are being written out as decimal numbers. But Lua, in some versions of the client, will use different radix points and different parsing rules for decimal numbers. And a radix point is just what is the character that is separating the whole part from the fractional part. For instance, in America and in some other countries, you'll use a period to separate the whole and the fractional parts. And in many European countries, like the Netherlands, where I live, or France or Germany, for example, you'll use a comma as the radix point to separate the whole part from the fractional part. Now, that's all very well and good if you're expecting it, but when Lua tries to parse this from a file, it sees two numbers, 1246 and 0. And it is trying to assign that to this value here, which then just gets 1246, comma 0. That's not great. Similarly, in Lua parsing things where we try to convert strings into numbers, the parser will be expecting either a comma or a period based on what your culture is and dependent on whether you're 32-bit or 64-bit. Different combinations of those will come into play. Now, I did make a blog post about this over at lifebeyondtheshire.com. I probably should have looked at it before today. Let's see. Okay, so over at Life Beyond the Shire, there is a blog post. I'm going to go ahead and paste that into chat here. And it talks about what save files look like under different configurations. So for instance, when you're saving in 64-bit LOTRO client in German, you're going to see those decimal values come out like this. Now, in the situation I just showed, where you have 1246, 0, you're still getting a number that's very similar to what you were looking for, right? But when you have fractional values like this number, which is 0.747, suddenly that's two numbers, 0 and a really big number. And 0 is not wrong for a X or Y position, though it's usually not correct, but at least it's on screen. But 747,000 pixels is usually off of your screen, unless you have a ridiculous setup. So is 317,000, 250,000. None of these, if interpreted as a number, is going to be on screen, and that's a problem. All right, I wonder, where did I talk about 32-bit client? 32-bit client numbers are parsed on the locale. But not 64-bit numbers. So if you want to be kind, we're going to support both writing to and reading from a file and also parsing numbers. Now I'm going to be cribbing from myself a lot here from this blog post. If you want to have that following along at home, that's no problem because that's, I'm doing some of that myself. Also, highly recommended is if you have a plugin that already works, you can go ahead and use that some. In fact, I should put a plugin back that does just that. So Documents, Lord of the Rings Online, Plugins. I'm going to go ahead and put back a plugin that I know does this, the Opaque Quest Tracker plugin. So I can just go pull that in from where I stuck that off. Oh, even better, I could install it. But I don't have to worry about messing it up. So, I recommend installing things with the plugin compendium. It's an application you can download, and it'll handle all the downloading and extracting of the archive files. Let's go ahead and give that a moment to launch. There we go. So we're going to go ahead and add Opaque Quest Tracker. Let's do it. Let's add that, and it's already done. We can see it's appeared here in the plugins, and we're going to go ahead and hit the green arrow in the plugin manager to refresh your list of available plugins. Excellent. It's working. Oh, thanks, Moobot. Okay. So in the opaque quest tracker, we have a vindarpatch.lua file that we're going to want to crib from. And we probably also have some string stuff, localization stuff. Excellent. That's going to include this thing right here. This is Euro format and Euro normalize. That's what's going to take a string value that has a radix point in it and make sure that it is the correct value for parsing into a number, comma or period. Just checking my notes here. Okay, so as we mentioned, and as you'll see in that post, if you're following along, localizing save files with Vindar's patch. This is also touched on, well, not just touched on, but oh, all the foreign stuff's going to be hard to find. Oh, good, there's redirects. So I highly recommend Garen's writing LOTRO Lua plugins for noobs thread, in which, among other things, you will find internationalization via Vindar's patch. Excellent. This is where that Euro format and Euro normalize is lifted from as well. Excellent. So we're looking for turbine.plugindata.save and turbine.plugindata.load. Those are the functions that are going to be messing us up. So I'm going to go ahead and merge these two windows because I'm running out of screen real estate. And I'm going to go ahead and do a search for plugin data. And I want to search recursively in my current folder. Plugins, MinstrelBuffs. Let's go ahead and find that. Excellent. We found a plugin data.load and a plugin data.save. Excuse me. That's perfect. And these are both in settings, even better. Oh, looks like we're doing a p call, which is a way in Lua that you can call a function and know if it failed and catch it without crashing. Settings encoder decode table. Well, I'm intrigued. Let's go on a little bit of a pause here and say, what's going on with that? We have a settings encoder call. Function encode numbers in German and French versions. Interesting. Well, I'm going to pause to glance at this code. I'm not sure what it's supposed to be doing, but the main thing that we can tell is not being done from our experience last time is the ability to switch from English to German without the file being wrong. All right, if it's a number, then encode it in num. LOTRO deep thought moment, says Little Redhead. Absolutely. So a thing that I'm looking at is this called a turbine.engine.getLocale because I'm very curious what that is supposed to or expected to return. So let's go ahead and pull up our trusty API documentation, and that is a turbine.engine.getLocale. Now, this is supposed to return a string. Awesome. Identifying the locale. Well, that's pretty cool. Now, what I'm curious about is how does opaque quest tracker get locale? How do we know what it is? Oh, fascinating. So there's get locale and there's get language. All right, I'm curious, what is the difference? So we're going to go ahead and come on in to something. Let's go ahead and come on into option window. Why not? And we're just going to go ahead and say turbine.shell.writeLine. And we're going to do two things. Locale, turbine.engine.get locale. And I probably screwed up my dots versus my colons here. Let me, nope, that looks okay. But they're doing dot get locale. Why would they do that? Is that right? It does say dot get locale. Is mine wrong? Probably wrong, but probably doesn't matter. Okay, dot get locale. And we're also going to do a dot get language. Get language is supposed to return a number, and that's supposed to be in this language enumeration. So let's go ahead and minimize our API here a second. We're going to go ahead and load the MinstrelBuffs, and we can see, fascinating, the locale is EN and the language is 2. Okay. I don't think I realized that the locale was a thing. Interesting. So we have a if locale is FR or if locale equals DE. Now what I don't know, right off the top of my head, is if that's going to work, are we going to see FR and DE? So that'll be something to look out for when we switch over. I'll just leave those debug statements in there so we can see that. So presumably, if we're in French or in German, it's going to try to do these things. If the type is a number, then we're going to spit it out between a couple of bracket tag, HTML style tags, and then format the number as a floating point number. Okay, neat. So we have a new key, new data that. But where do we use it? If type data k, I'm confused how this is supposed to work actually. So we have k and v, and if the type of k is a number, well, I gotta say, I'm not convinced we need all of that. But let's go ahead and forge ahead with the theory that we can safely replace the turbine.plugin.load call with a call to the vendor patch instead. Hello, Iron Wolf. I'm trying to figure out what this settings encoder is intending to do with French and German clients. So that's why I'm stumbling, because I forgot that this existed, if I ever knew. You know, I think this is actually going to not work anyway, because this looks like it predates the switch to 64-bit and the update to the Lua client, which caused formatting of floating point numbers to spit out a comma instead of a period for the radix point. If we come in here, we can see that's hard-coded here. Iron Wolf says, episode 33, I feel way behind. Don't worry, there's like 7 minutes of content in each of these. The trick is knowing where it is. Baz says, if it is a number, you turn it into a string with num as identifier, so you never ever deal with the number problem. Well, my question is, since we're doing a floating point formatting of a string in the German or French client with 64-bit client, that's going to spit out a number like 1, 0. Right, that's how numbers are formatted under 64-bit Lua in Lord of the Rings Online. So that was a thing that came up last year when the internal Lua seemed to be updated on the SSG end. Before it did used to do with a decimal point, but then that changed. And so if you do a format for a floating point number on the French or German client, you're probably going to see 1,0. And this thing over here that tries to parse it is looking for a decimal, and it's not going to see that. I think that is a problem. I think that is not going to work correctly. Now, as it stands, Baz says, I'm not sure if that will always work, but num ... toString value always works. But we're not doing that. We're doing a %f formatting a number into a string. And if you call toString on a floating point value under a 64-bit German client, do you not get... Oh, I really feel like I should have a client. I'm going to launch another client. Well, can I? Let's find out. I'm going to try to launch a client. Yes, Baz says it is time to test it. I agree. I'm not sure if I can change client languages while a client is running. Let's find out. Oh, I can't patch. Let's go into Deutsch. Fantastic. Does it want to patch? It does want to patch. Can it patch? It can. Excellent. I don't believe in typing passwords. Okay, so perfect. Let's go ahead and log on into Evernight here. And we're just going to run some code in these clients. Now, my apologies if this stutters out. Having 2 LOTRO clients running at the same time may be a challenge. But in the meantime, I've got the Brie music in the background. Great. Det här är ringa online. All right. Bard. Excellent. You're even a minstrel. Daher sounds like laughter, says Iron Wolf. To me, it sounds like the Mister, or the Lord type person. It's similar to Heron in Dutch, which I'm slowly getting used to. All right, Lalafahang, excellent. So let's go ahead and come on into Plugin Manager. Oof, that does feel a little much. I'm gonna try minimizing everything. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so MinstrelBuff load. Great. Oh, fantastic. So the plugin, as we saw, used the get locale, but the locale is still returning as en, whereas the language code is successfully coming back with German. So that is why that code is just not running. Maybe it did run it once upon a time. Maybe get locale was the way. I'm wondering if 10 years ago there was a switch away from get locale to get language, and this is just a remnant of that. But no worries. We can also do some tests. Oh man, no. I'm going to go ahead and dial down the options on both of these because I have a feeling that the other one is still, yeah, it's like raining and Brie. That can't help. Graphics, no. Thank you. Okay, so my question, was, oh yes, Baz's question actually. let's go ahead and look at this right here. So I want to see what that code does. I'm going to come back into the options window. That's great. And so we're going to say local k equals, let's say, 2.718. That's a good number. And if type of k equals number, then I'm going to say local new k equals that, new k equals that, and then we're just going to do a turbine.shell.writeLine formatted number, and we're going to go ahead and attach new k. Neat. Let's try that. Oh, Baz points out, let's check if toString is different. Love it. Thank you. toString number. And that's going to just be toString of k. Hopefully that looks right, except for the part that's under my face. Okay. Okay, let's give that a try. So I'm going to come on in here, and I'll actually do this on both clients just to compare. Nope, that's not going to work. 16, and yeah, I knew I needed to go fix that, and then I forgot. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and load, and we can see formatted number. Oh, interesting. I should double check that I am on 64-bit account, but I should be. Okay, so yes, I guess that would work. Maybe I am mentally swapping which direction that went to. Options, and that's 64-bit client. Excellent. And I suppose if I go into a task manager, among other things, that's likely to make my computer sad, but it is LOTRO 64. Okay, so awesome. And just for completeness, let's come back in here, and we'll go ahead and system, plugin manager, and we're going to go ahead and unload and load. And we've got same thing, 2.718 and 2.718. Awesome. So this is not going to be the problem that I thought it was. The problem that I thought it was is that locale does not work, apparently, at least not on my computer. Maybe this does work on other systems. Maybe the fact that my computer is running is, my Windows locale is English, but the game is not. But that's sort of the point. If the game is in German, it doesn't matter that my computer is in English. The game display is in German. So I think a better thing would be language. And if that's the case, maybe we can go ahead and take advantage of this existing system and just kind of shoehorn this in. So if we go ahead and get client language equals turbine.english.getLanguage, and then we can then define these constants, although we don't need the English, it's just there for completeness. Locale, we can see, is used here. So we can say, in fact, let's just do language, keep it nice and simple. If language equals, and we're going to replace that with capital FR, or language equals capital DE, and that's it. Locale, oh, also down there, awesome. If language equals FR or language equals DE. Iron Wolf asks, probably already covered it, but can you detect 32 versus 64 and do things behave differently? Last time I did testing on this, I put some stuff here in this blog post. I'm going to shrink it down a little bit. So as of this time when I was testing it, last July, the 64-bit client saves out floating point numbers in a localized manner, which that's an interesting point, Baz. I'll get back to that. So, Iron Wolf, if you write out a number to a file and then try to read it back in, like you could write out 1.2. If you try to read it back in, If you are in English, it'll be 1.2, and if you're in French and German, it'll be 1,2, which is an invalid file format, so you will actually fail to read the file. So you could detect 32 versus 64 if you are in French or German using that technique, if you want to call it that. But I don't think it's really sensible to do that. If you do the stuff that's in this post, or if you always just wrap your numbers in this tag, which I think Baz is alluding to, we'll get to that in a second. If you do these techniques, it doesn't actually matter, right? You do the stuff you need to do. You write it out correctly by surrounding it in quotes is all that's really necessary. This surrounding it with num tags is just extra fanciness. So if you surround it with num tags, surround it in quotes, whatever, and then if once it's in the system, you parse it correctly. And I think that's what they're trying to avoid, is having to change out commas to periods. Then it doesn't matter if you're in 32 versus 64 as far as the plugin is concerned. Baz, doesn't matter what language it is, though. Always using this loading process should be fine, right? That is a really interesting point. Why does it care? I think the answer is you do like a millisecond extra of processing for English if you do this. That's a good point, though. Let's just get rid of that. What's going on here? Is there any reason not to do this? I guess the one question is, does it actually work? Don't know. Let's find out. All right, so we're going to unload. We're going to reload. We're just going to move this around, and we're going to unload. And what I want to do is actually, before I reload that, I want to go look and see what that file looks like. So we've already got a plugin data here. I'm going to just tear that off into its own window that we can keep here over to the side. That is the one for, I'm guessing, yep, Tideless. Excellent. So we're going to go ahead and open up a different account, Fingerhoods Cloud MinstrelBuff plugin. There we go. So here we see numbers are surrounded by num. What we don't see are all the other bits. Interesting. I want to save this off for a moment so I can refer to that in case it gets blown away. What are we missing? Soliloquy, theme index, main pause X, main pause effect. Okay, the soliloquy stuff is not there. Well, I'm not going to worry about that too much. Okay, so if I come back in and go ahead and load, okay, that did not work. What's going on here? Oh yes, of course, I know. So I'm going to go ahead and move that over here and unload. Those numbers are not right. But what's going wrong? We're getting 100, 100, which is where the default is. I mean, if I say 400 for the, actually, let's do 400 for the X position. That's fine. What? Yeah, it's fine. Okay, so 400 is good. But if I load that and move that around, okay, that's weird. But it seems to be working. Maybe I'm just clicking the wrong button. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move this manually one more time. And unload. Reload. Great. Okay. I'm not sure what that was. Sometimes I'm just clicking things and I'm not clicking the right things. Obviously, we have all the settings we're expecting to here. That's good. And we are seeing the position of the window move around. Even better. And if I do the soliloquy tracker and go ahead and unload and reload, we can see the soliloquy tracker has also moved around. Perfect. Okay, so is this a problem if we go ahead and use it over here on an English client? I don't know. Let's find out. Okay, so I went ahead and unloaded and reloaded a couple of times to see. We are seeing 339 point. Awesome. So everything looks pretty good there as well. If I come back in and I look for the soliloquy tracker, move that around a little bit, unload, reload. Okay, everything seems to be doing great. Now, is everything that needs to be, whoops, where'd my stuff go? Is everything that needs to be escaped being escaped? Well, we have a false here. We have some Booleans here. Those are probably fine as they are. So we have false and true. Fortunately, those aren't being localized to German or French versions of the word false and true. So the other question is, does this work in a 32-bit account? Well, let's find out. So we have another client coming up. We'll go ahead and change options to 32-bit account, or 32-bit client, and we'll go ahead and launch that. Oh, that's going to kick this one out. Hang on. Yeah, sure. Let me see if I can catch it before it logs me in. I should have launched with this one. Okay. That one. Okay. Did I get logged off? No, I caught it in time. Excellent. So we're going to go ahead and launch a 32-bit client. Options. 32-bit client. Excellent. Let's go ahead and come on in here with a different account. It's useful sometimes to have some throwaway accounts for music groups, but also for testing. Just like this, being able to log in multiple times in different configurations. So this is a German 32-bit client that we're coming up on here. But in the meantime, while that's launching, what else do I want to think about here? We're doing stuff. Oh, yeah, you can access the internet. That would be good. So the decoder, if the type is string, if we match that, okay, that's why it is working to load a file that has already been saved without nums. Is it saying if the num's not there, then just go ahead and use the value itself. Nice. Baz says this function looks complicated because you have duplicated code. I will point out this is not my code. This was already here. I'm as an experiment trying to make use of this code because it means the smallest amount of code change possible. Introducing the Vindar patch, introducing the Euro normalized functionality, these are totally possible things to do. But if I can just delete that locale check, bam. Iron Wolf says, can't imagine the amount of work to translate this whole game to another language. Yes, I agree. It's just astonishing how much text this is. And that kind of plays true to the MMO nature of it with its mud roots, right? Like, this is a fancy graphical user interface over a whole bunch of text. From, the Gru has hit you for 5 damage, you have hit the Gru for 7 damage, to everything else. All right, my computer is definitely not a fan of having 3 clients running while streaming, so I'm going to try to do this fast. But I need a new tab in which we can track stuff. So using the trick that we learned last time, if we're coming for, oh, what text are we looking for? That stuff, that looks great, right? Sorry, I'm trying to remember. No, not that one. I'm trying to remember what color standard and error are. And I feel like I know the answer, but just in case. All right, so standard, no, that's event broadcast. Standard is this one down here. Awesome. Let's go ahead and get that. Oh, it's just called standard. Why don't I look for these things first? Great. We're going to go ahead and turn that off. And just out of curiosity, what is German for error? Error, right underneath emote. Great, let's check that. Failure. All right. Has that sound of fail in there. Great. If I were doing a lot of testing between French and German, I would probably write down some of these things as hints to myself. But, okay. So we've got a locale, still English, language, great. Ah, that's where we are. Yeah, that'll do it. Okay, so I'm going to move MinstrelBuffs over here, unload, and then load it back up. And this is what the problem is. We are seeing, in fact, let me load it up in a file. We're going to go ahead and come on up to plugin data, and this is 7.2, and Dazenblad. And we're going to come on into the MinstrelBuffs plugin data here. And this right here is what we're looking at. So on 32-bit client for German and French, we're seeing that radix point is coming across as a comma. And this is exactly the problem that I was thinking backwards on. I thought that it was going to be a problem here, 64-bit client. It's the other way around. 32-bit client, French and German, this needs to be a comma. Now, can we do that? Absolutely, we can do that. You know that check we eliminated before? Function, settings encoder, get radix, right? And then if language equals en, then return that, else return that. There we go. Now we have a radix point. I could even call it a radix point. Okay, so if we go ahead and do that here with self get radix point, and yes, there's duplicate stuff here, but I can't worry about that right now. We're going to go ahead and Baz says an interesting point. Actually, hang on. Okay, two interesting questions. Dun, 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 dun. Baz points out, understanding it gets confusing when a function is twice as long as it should be. Absolutely true. Collapsing this down could definitely be a thing. Iron Wolf, I remember calling EverQuest, fancy chat room, with some stuff to do while the conversation lags. Yeah, that's sort of the mud ancestors of an MMO. There's a lot of chatting and some pretty graphics, and LOTRO is very, or I find it very pretty. But lots of text. Iron Wolf, is there never 1,000 separator? That's an interesting question. Of course, in some cultures, Japanese I'm thinking of specifically, you don't separate it under the thousands, you separate it under the 10,000s. But of course, we're talking English, French, and German here. Let's go ahead and go to our options window. And let's go ahead and do a 27182. We'll just go ahead and extend that number out. We can see that no, there's not 1,000 or a 10,000s separator in the German 32-bit client, but why stop there? We can go ahead and test that in the German 64-bit client, no thousands separator, and we can test that in the English 64-bit client as well. No thousands separator, 10,000 separator, either or. So excellent question, Iron Wolf. No, it is just the radix point that's getting formatted. Now you could probably do a fancy call to the format function to get that separator. All right, could do a string replace. Yeah, Iron Wolf, what you're saying there, the string replace, that is exactly the approach recommended by Garen in that one post, where you use the Vindar patch to safely save and load numbers, and then you use the Euro normalize function, which basically says, given the string 1,000, based on how that parses, if you called to number on that, if that is 1, then we're in Euro format. Otherwise, we're not in Euro format, or if it's true, I should say. And if we are in that, then Euro normalize is defined this way. Otherwise, Euro normalize is defined as this way, where you're going to head and doing that conversion on load. So you can absolutely do that. Again, I'm sort of going off into the weeds here with settings in Coder because I find it fascinating that this is in place. And I don't necessarily want to just be like, no, I will replace you with what I think is better without understanding why it's here in the first place. So Baz says you could match on a dot star. This is true. When I do pattern matching, actually, let me copy off a line here so we can play around. If I do pattern matching, and what Baz is suggesting is, since we're already doing a match, instead of doing dot, wait a second, we're doing dot. Shouldn't dot itself match on any character? What's going on here? Have I completely misread this? Anyway, I would say dot or comma specifically, not dot star, because I'd be concerned about the dot star greedily consuming the rest of the number, which it would do. Because the dot star should greedily consume everything over here, and you would truncate the number. Iron Wolf says, sorry, coming in late on my small tablet screen, so I'm missing a lot. Not a concern. Glad to have you here. But I have seriously gotten myself into a what am I doing here moment, because shouldn't that dot match on anything? And if it should match on anything, why is this not working? But I'm going to go ahead and just see. Little Redhead says just ask him to read it off to you. I think I will not do that, but thank you. All right, I'm going to try moving this around over here on the 32-bit version. I know, poor computer. I'm sorry for running 3 LOTRO clients. Oh, but it does work. Fantastic. Okay, so a thing. So if we're decoding, I want to go ahead and add an output, turbine.shell.writeLine found type k equals string. And I do this a bunch when I'm just trying to understand code, just spit out the state of things. If I had a debugger, I'd be stepping through here line by line to see how things are being perturbed as the system goes. This is the next best thing. So found type k, and I want to say that we're doing k first, and then we're doing new key. I want to see that too. But of course I'll have to put that after new key is actually defined as something. And then we're also going to do found type data k equals string, and then we're going to do the same thing, where data k and new data, new key. Great. So I just want to see some of those pieces of information. So coming on in, great. So that's neat. One of the things I would like to do there is actually, because these are all numbers with 0 as the fractional part, I want to play with that a moment. So let's go ahead and put that main position to be 0.1 instead. So when I load that, oh, awesome. We can see 1120.1 with a comma as the radix. Oh, interesting. I do. I know. Good point. Baz was excluding the D-digit selectors and using dot to get everything between the tags, not dot as a character. That's a very good point. So yes, there is a number selector there. The reason why I'm hesitant to do that, besides just the not quite code golf, but the minimalist exercise of what's the smallest change I can do to make this work, just sort of a mental game, really, is I think it's useful to say this should look like a number. And if someone types in the word 11, that should not be something we try to assign to a number, right? And so keeping it restricted to say there should be digits and a separator and more digits, that kind of prevents any kind of mishap where something gets written out that shouldn't be there, or someone goes and mucks with a file or something, which you shouldn't really have to worry about. But the other, yeah, if you accidentally write something out that you didn't mean to, then you're not going to fail to import. You're just not going to take that information. You'll have to use the default instead. So absolutely, I don't know if there is a %d in the selector. Oh, interesting. Baz points out if you use getRadixPoint and switch around, you're not going to get the right thing. Absolutely. And that kind of brings us to the problem where this is going to fail, is we are not accounting for that. Now, what you can do, and what I was alluding to earlier, is you can just come on in here and say, I will take a dot or a comma, please. But the parsing is the problem. You need it to be in the right format for the 32-bit to take it. To take it in and handle it. Because if a 32-bit client, if a 64-bit client sees it with a comma, it's going to not parse it correctly. Okay. Don't you have to escape dot? Yeah, you'd think so. No, it really doesn't like that. Lua pattern matching is not quite regular expressions. And yet, there's probably a way to do it. I think I've managed, or you all have managed to convince me, if not me convincing me, this is kind of doomed to failure, or at least it's overcomplicated. We already have a system that works. This is just not necessary with the tools we have nowadays, and this is kind of broken on the face of it. So, with that being said, I think this was really neat to play around with, but I don't think we need to worry about this. So, what we would do instead is say, no, we're going to go back to our source control. I'm going to bring up fork, and while that's working in the background, among all the other things that are working in the background, good thing I'm not trying to move on any of these clients, we're going to go ahead and revisit Opaque Quest Tracker. So Opaque Quest Tracker has a Euro normalized function, and how do we use that? Whenever we pull in a number from a file that we think is a decimal number, we're going to go ahead and call Euro normalize on it, and that's going to make sure the string is, oh, sorry. That's going to make sure that, first of all, we replace the comma with a period or the period with a comma if we need to. Oh, percent dot. That's how you escape it, of course. And so it's going to convert it, if necessary, with a string.gsub, and then we're going to call it toNumber on it now that we know it's in the correct format and return that. So your normalize is returning a number, a Lua number, and we're assigning that to these things. And so that's the one half of it. Is your loading function should just go ahead and know these things about the data it's saving. Now you don't have to do that in the saving, you just call patch data save. The patch data save is going to go take care of wrapping those numbers up in a way that they're not going to get distorted on saving, presumably by calling toString. And then on loading, that's where we go ahead and Euro normalize whatever things are numbers. So I think that's probably the best bet right now. So all those little bits and pieces, let's take a look. Where are we? All right, to-do file, that's great. Main, there's a dump helper function, don't need to worry about that. Options window, we still have this helper stuff written out just to play around. Don't care about that. And then settings encoder. All these things I think are going to be discarded. Okay, we're good. They're gone. So if I go ahead and unload and reload, we are back to this doesn't work. Yeah, that's not surprising. So in order to make that work for this character, I'm going to come on in and delete those tags. I bet it's still not going to work. No, but that's okay. We'll do the code side of things first. So what do we need? We need a Euro normalize function. And this is just bog standard. You can copy it from the LOTRO forums on the plugin development for noobs thread or from another plugin. It's pretty much identical everywhere. And we need the Euro format. Now, we could do this in settings. We could also just do it as a replacement for the settings encoder. I mean, that sounds like a thing to do. So, Ironwolf says, I kind of like always change comma to period. Excellent, that's the direction we're going. Ironwolf says, what's the editor hotkey to select all the same as highlighted forward again? So if you're using the editor Sublime Text, then you can use Alt F3 to do a multi-select. Now you can also just go to selection and say, I don't know. Wait, sorry. Quick find all. That's what it turns out to. Once you've done a quick find all, or Alt F3, oh, thank you, Little Redhead, then you can go ahead and just start typing, or say I wanted to change settings encoder. Settings encoder is really cool. Then you can do that edit in multiple places at the same time. This is not a feature unique to Sublime Text. Many modern text editors have something similar, I think, but it's definitely not something you're going to get in your notepads. So hunt around if that's appealing to you. I use that kind of thing all the time in random ways that you just wouldn't think of. For instance, this has nothing to do with LOTRO, but it's an example that's on my mind. Let's see if I can find it real fast. Doing things off the cuff. So if you, like me, are looking for a list of words that match a pattern, you might, I don't want ads. Oh my goodness, so many ads. Hang on a sec. Tell you what, I'll just get the thing that I'm looking for. Yes, I'm human. There are no bicycles. I'm doing a CAPTCHA off screen here. Okay, so the problem is there's an unordered list on the screen, and I want to do something with that unordered list. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab it. Captivating content, I know. And get rid of that thing because who needs advertisements? So here's the problem. I have an unordered list, and when I try copy pasting it into somewhere else, cool. Iron Wolf says, I was hoping it was the same as in Visual Studio Code. It is not by default, as I would suspect you can rebind stuff in Sublime Text. So, yeah, for those who are not familiar with the multi-select, here is a bunch of stuff. If I want it all to be on its own line, then I can just go ahead and multi-select all of these close list item brackets, hit enter to clear them. I can select all the opening ones, hit delete, and then I just have these starting and ending tags, and there we go. Each one of those on their own line. Maybe I do want them all on a single line, but not with all the HTML stuff. Boom. Okay, there we go. So it was just a bunch of three-letter words off of a thing. So if you're trying to do processing like that, it just comes in really handy to have that technique in your toolkit, whether or not you're using it on a plugin or not. It's just one of those things where, like once a week at least, there's some problem that is just easily solved by being able to multi-select 1,000 things in a document. Excellent. Iron Wolf says multi-cursor is an amazing tool. Yeah. I keep calling it multi-select. I don't know that that's the official term for it. It's just what sticks in my head. All right, so we have an is Euro format, and the other thing we want is we want to go ahead and pull in that Vindar patch file. Now, this is the same Vindar patch file you're going to find in dozens of plugins. But the important thing is to remember to import that sucker, otherwise you will be sad. And I don't want you to be sad. So we're going to go ahead and come into, is there a main? There is a main. Excellent. And we're going to go ahead and import, but that path does change. So it's not Cube plugins anymore. It is just MinstrelBuff window. And we're going to go ahead and import it before we need it in the settings. There we go. Yes, Iron Wolf points out, home and N, while you're doing a multi-select, let's say I do a MinstrelBuff window, and I want to do something at the end of the line. You can do an end or a home to kind of realign things, and this can be very useful. I don't have I guess I could do something like this. So if I have multi-selected all of these functions, the cursors are not, and this is hard to see, I'm sure on a small screen, but the cursors are on a different horizontal position on each line. But if I were to hit home, now we're at the beginning of each line, I can go ahead and copy those lines, and now I see every line in that file that had a function call all together, right? Like I don't have a use for that right now, but every once in a while I do have a use for that. Neat. So in our main file, we're including the Vindar patch, so we're ready to go on that. And in our settings encoder, we're ready to go with the Euro normalize. So the final bit is Vindar, patch. We're looking for patch. So we're looking for patch data load and patch data save. And those should take the same parameters. So if we come into settings, was settings file correct? We're doing a p call. Now, the Vindar stuff should eliminate the need for a p call, but I don't feel like getting rid of it. We are going to get rid of the call to decode table, and instead of turbine.plugins.load, we're doing patch data load. There we go. And then The only other plugin data is this turbine.plugin.save. And we're saving, again, the encoded table. So if instead of that, we do a patch data save, wrong file. Instead of turbine plugin data save, we're going to do a patch data save. Perfect. And then the final thing. Yeah. All right. Iron Wolf says Control-Shift-L is the same select all for Visual Studio Code. Nice. Yeah, because I'm so used to doing it in Sublime Text, there are times when I will be doing something in Visual Studio for my day job, and I will just copy the text into Sublime Text, do the multi-select transform really quickly, and then copy it back. Actually, I'll do that a fair amount if there's just a small chunk in a much larger file. Let's say this. I will oftentimes paste it into a new clipboard here in isolation so that I can change it without feeling like I'm going to do global changes that I'm not looking for. So settings table, let's go ahead and say is awesome. And then I can go ahead and paste that back, knowing that I could not have affected anything in a wider scope. Totally recommend if you're going to do any sort of multi-select or multi-editing, go out and you know you're only going to be doing a small portion of the file. Yeah, just pull it out, do your stuff, put it back. You do not have to do it all in the same place. That being said, we have done the patch data load. Now is where we need to go ahead and do the final Euro normalize. So we know, or can know, which things are likely to be numbers. We have that in our window over here. So anything with num in it, in fact. So theme index. Why is that a decimal number? Ugh. Baz says, not sure if you're interested, but I sort of solved the loading issue, I think, in the previous format. I'm happy to hear what you have to say. Yeah. I don't mind kind of edging this towards the more modern, commonly accepted solution because it's a little bit easier for people to cope with if they see it than some custom encoder that's meant to replicate what the vendor patch is doing. But I'm also very curious what the sort of minimum set of changes is to do it. So absolutely. Okay, self.settings table, and we think that is theme index equals Euro normalize. And we're just doing that, right? Euro normalize, yeah, we're just applying that because this came in as a string, and we're going to fix it up as a number. Cool, that's one of them. We have main pos x and main pos y. We can do the exact same thing. Now we could actually make a little helper. So function settings fix up number, and we can just take in the key. And then we can say self.settings table key equals Euro normalize, same thing, self.settings table key. And then we can just go ahead and say self fix up number, and then pass in these keys. And suddenly our lines get a lot more readable. So main pos x, main pos y. Excellent. What else do we have? All right, so that was theme index. We're just going to move that around. We have main pos x. We have main pos y. We have soliloquy pos x and soliloquy pos y. Super easy. So we're just going to copy that in. And y. Baz says, it ain't pretty. I believe you. I believe you. I was having trouble wrapping my head while doing this live around the implications of how the radix point changes would translate. All right, cool. Baz has pasted some Lua code in. I'm going to go ahead and copy that into, oh, why not, the settings encoder. Now, I assume this is in decode, and I assume it would go in somewhere like this. So that's where I'm going to go ahead and paste it, just so we can see. Now, as Baz said, it's not great, and I'm going to go ahead and unindent this because my tabs are kind of messed up. So we're doing an assignment, a multi-assignment, which is actually a feature I really like about Lua, where you can take multiple, you can return multiple arguments from a function. It's kind of a classic problem in your C's and your C++s where you get to return 0 or 1 things from your function without declaring a more complex aggregate thing. In Lua, you can just be like, yeah, I'm going to return these 3 things. Sort it out. Other scripting languages like Perl can do this kind of thing as well. But in your more serious languages, it doesn't fly. Okay. All right. Is chat output a thing in this function? Or in this? It is not. I'm just going to say turbine.shell.writeLine because, yes, there should be a function, but there is not currently. Okay, yeah, that says they're innocent. Okay, what does this do? So we're doing a string.match, and we're doing 2 capture groups. That's with the parentheses here. And we have an open bracket num. What is... What are the arguments to string.match in Lua? I'm confusing myself as I try to read this. String.match. So we're going to go ahead and pull that up real fast. So match. Really? All I want is a function called match. There we go. So you're looking for num 7.3 as the pattern. Now, is the 7.3 is that the number of digits? Is that what we're saying? I'm confusing myself again. Oh, excellent. It's a sample number. Neat. So a string.match, we have 2 capture groups, a questionable comma or period that may or may not be there. What happens if it's not there? The first one, we get greedy and capture the whole thing? Yeah, probably. Okay. Yeah, I think it is definitely doable. My only concern is that then you'll still have to do the Euro normalize in case you would be parsing with a comma or a period when you should have the other one. So I was convincing myself before that this is not by itself complete because of the parsing issue. Let me know if you think that's wrong. I'm going to go ahead and undo this so I don't have to worry about deleting it later. And then... Okay, Baz says you would need the Euro thing in there. Yeah, that's a thing. Okay, so we have a fix-up number call for each of the 5 things, and then we have some default values for these places. Now, interestingly, it looks like I forgot some default values for soliloquy, pause, X, and Y. Yeah, no time like the present to set those straight. Actually, I'm curious, was there a default? Okay, there was 200. So, cool. We're going to default that to 200, 200. I'd even prefer those to not be magic numbers. Arrow says the replace part is the outputting the for, yeah, okay. Neat. Okay, so we have some default values here. Awesome. If there's no theme, if there's that, we have some default values. Great. So this seems to be a sufficient thing. We've switched to patch data load and patch data save, and we've fixed up numbers so that they're internally consistent when they need to be. If that's the case, we might even be able to take this file here and load it on up. I'm going to go ahead and fix it up so that these nums are no longer there. And this is fingerhoodscod's file. Is this fingerhoodscod? No, that's Dowsenblad. Okay. We're going to go ahead and go to Dowsenblad, whose file is already fixed up. Great. So we're going to go ahead and load, and it appears in the right spot. Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and move it around. And where is the soliloquy thing? Here it is. Okay, I'm going to move that too. Awesome. So we're going to unload. We're going to reload. It's there. Everything just works. It's one of the things I really like about this solution. Ironwolf says, in their opinion, you could always have the settings file use the decimal point, the period, so that the settings file is encoded in a standard way, but being able to read comma is a nice way to bring forward old settings files. Yeah, that's kind of precisely the problem, is this solution is a little overkill. I don't know how many people still use the 32-bit client. I just assume it's a non-zero number, right? And so this solution is both sufficient and backwards compatible and maybe forward compatible for a little while. But it's sufficient, and it's very accepting in what you put in. If your numbers are a comma, if you've gone in and hand edited your file and you accidentally put a comma instead of a period, it doesn't matter. It's going to work. Oh, apparently one of my characters has logged out because I've taken so long. I guess I should go make myself not not AFK in all my other windows here. Okay, so we have Dowsenblad. Yeah, there's a Dowsenblad. Okay, let's double check Dowsenblad's file here. Now, I am seeing a nice thing about this is that those decimal values have just been truncated. We don't need them. Big fan. Okay. Let's go ahead and check out fingerhoodscod then. This is the 64-bit version of the German client. Oh, actually, before I do that, let's go ahead and add a 0.1 here, a comma 1 for main pos y. Oh, I gotta unload first. Okay, so 254, comma 1 loads just fine. Save it, and we still get 254, comma 1. What if we do 254.1? Load it, save it, 254, comma 1. That works great. All right, next up, fingerhoodscod. Fingerhoodscod is working 64-bit German. So if we go ahead and load, we're going to go ahead and move MinstrelBuffs around to here. Do we have a tracker? What is that thing called? Oh my goodness. Where'd my tracker go? What's it called in German? Well, it's called the Selbstsprache tracker. Okay, we can do that. Selbstsprache tracker. Where did you go? Did I just drag you somewhere random? Ah, it's in the upper left. Neat. All right, we're going to go ahead and move that around. We're going to go ahead and unload and reload. Okay, Selbstsprache tracker is not working. Edit settings. Well, this is a great chance to see what's wrong. Okay, so this is fingerhoodscod. So we can see that is getting saved to 0. Why is that? Well, if we unload, that's 0. Well, that makes sense. Let's go ahead and drag that somewhere else and see what gets saved. It doesn't get saved. Well, that's fascinating. What's going on there? Let's try 200 and 400 just to get things started. Okay, it definitely looks like something happened there. Now it's 200 and 400. What is the meaning of this? What's going on here? Get, set. Well, I think that's a caterpillar, but it sure does look like a bug. Why? What am I missing? Well, I think what I'm really missing is kind of the default behavior, the default position, right? Oh, interesting. Attempt to index field settings table, a nil value. Great, we found an edge case. So I just deleted the content of that file there, and we can see that the settings is nil. So let's go ahead and do these fix-ups after we check for values in there. That's the first thing. And then theme index is also good to check there. Main pause, soliloquy, okay. So that's good to know that we needed to reorganize where we were doing the fix-ups to make sure they were all valid entries. Neat. All right, MinstrelBuffs, drag it to the center of the screen, that tracker, drag it to the center of the screen, and unload. Awesome. So what happens? Nothing. Terrible things. All right, so if I save this file, what's going on with fingercodes crowds save file? We have soliloquy position X, soliloquy position Y. Those things have not changed. I feel like I'm going in crazy here. These things should change. So, what is going on? You know, a thing I'm noticing is that when we get the value, if the value is null, we don't set the value to anything. We just return a temporary. So is my save, did I do something wrong with the save function here? I mean, could be. So if the settings table is not equal to null, I mean, sure, else turbine.shell.writeLine settings was nil, can't write out. Maybe that's something that's happening. Nope, it's not. Let's move MinstrelBuffs around. Let's move the soliloquy tracker around. Okay, we definitely didn't get that error message. So, what else could be wrong? We're doing a patch out of save. Datascope character, yeah. Settings table. Now we do still have that dump. So turbine.shell.writeLine writing data. Cool. Let's just see what we're writing out, just out of curiosity. Oh, now it worked. Why? Okay, that Ironwolf says, when does it write the settings? That's an excellent question. Apparently, a lot of the time. Like when I turn the screen off and back on, we write at least once. And I'm gonna offload and load it back up. Okay, we have actually written the data out twice already. I don't understand. Oh, maybe I do understand. Okay, first of all, anytime... Oh, that's funny. So this thing's saving its file all the time. I don't think I like that. Anytime anything changes, basically. Also, I'm just curious, was settings file correct? Sure, I want to know more. Temp. Tell me more about what's happening from that p call. I can't, it's a nil value. Okay, so was settings file correct? True. Temp is nil. Well, what on earth is temp for? Why are you setting it to anything? I think that's the exception, just in case you needed it. So we're not saving from the MinstrelBuff settings file corrupt, which we would have seen that. Yeah, so this thing is changing or saving itself all the time, which is just weird. And I say weird. It's not great. That would suggest if I'm dragging this, is it going to save it each pixel? No. In fact, it didn't save it, change it at all. Okay. How does this thing work? Oh, but it saved it when I turned. Oh. Okay, so it doesn't save when the plugin unloads. It saves when you change this. In fact, it saves twice. So the problem is if you trigger the toggle drag bars thing, move it around and unload it, it does not save its position, which is delightful. But if you do it the way normal people do it, which is, okay, come on in, move stuff around, turn that off, then yes. Okay, this is... I mean, is it going too far to say it's an abomination? Like, it's wrong. It's not right. I'm just going to refresh these things, I think. I'm not going to get back. Okay, so my problems have been from a fundamental misunderstanding of how this function decides to save itself. The common approach is save your settings when you're unloaded, it's fine. A possible approach is to save it every time something changes. This is just calling save when the UI toggling happens. Huh. Irolf says, I kind of like that behavior. So you could undo the move if you knew that. But it's not something anyone would ever get in the situation to do. Yeah, I am not a fan. But that's okay. We're not here to fix that. I am curious where it's actually getting triggered, though. It's only getting called in settings. So I'm guessing something like set main position is getting called from the options, maybe? No? So if I were truly invested in this, I would go ahead and start setting standard outputs from each of the functions that could call save to try to track down what the logic flow is here. But I think I have satisfied myself that each of those times I was not seeing updates to the save file was because I was falling into this trap of it only saves under certain conditions. Which, okay, now that we know that, we know that. Maybe I should make a note of that somewhere, or else I will forget that, but it'll be exciting to relearn it. Okay, just coming on in, we can go ahead and discard this one-line change. Don't need that. We can go ahead and, okay, Vindar patch is good. And in settings, what all have we done and what all of it do we not need? I'm going to go ahead and open up an external file comparison utility. I use Beyond Compare. And I'm just going to go ahead and start deleting those shell right line stuff. Sometimes I find that just a little bit simpler than looking at the code itself. This is a nice highlight of what's different. So we have the fix up number, we have the patch data load, we have the patch data save, and we have those calls to fix up. And we have some defaults. Neat. Okay, that's great. So I'm going to go ahead and take a snapshot here. Is my to-do file saved? That's a good question. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and open up our README file and fixed how save files are written/read to deal with 32-bit/64-bit/language issues. We'll just call it that. Call it good. So we can go ahead and fix that in the to-do, and then go ahead and start taking a snapshot. So added Vindar patch to fix loading files from other configurations. Issues, number formatting. Yeah, that's fair. You think that's a little bit too verbose? Or not verbose enough? Fixed how save files are written/read to deal with 32 bits for language number formatting. Love it. I feel like if you know, you know, right? All right. We're going to go ahead and take a snapshot from there. Options window. None of that is necessary. In fact, I'd go so far as to say we can go ahead and discard it. All right. Main, we do need the Vindar patch import. We don't need to commit that dump. It's just there for times like these. All right. We're going to go ahead and commit everything here in settings. And then settings in coder, we're going to go ahead and commit that as well. Vindar patch is brand new. And now we have our debug options and our dump that we're not going to commit. And Will says, it'll trigger a better memory for you, the maintainer, probably. You know, that's an interesting question. I'm not actually the maintainer. I keep submitting patches. The original maintainer of MinstrelBuffs may not be active any longer. So just like travel window, there may come a time where it's useful for someone else to take over it. I don't think today is that day, though. Okay, we're going to go ahead and commit that. We've got ourselves a snapshot. We've committed all of that into its own little bit of a commit. Okay, awesome. So I think this is actually probably a good place to pause. for the evening. We've gone ahead and done a deep dive into some of the issues between 32-bit and 64-bit clients, between English, German, and French, and possibly some ways to kind of streamline the fix to incorporate the existing code. But the more realistic thing is to just stop using the old. And you know what? Why do we even have this? Should it be deleted? It almost feels like it should. Yeah. I'm reluctant to delete it on this one, but if I were to take over maintenance of the whole thing, I think that would be gone. Sorry. I'm distracting myself. Anyway, we did a little bit of a deep dive of what it might take to make this work. Saw why it wasn't working in the beginning, because locale isn't working. This code is never going to get called because locale is always English for me, even though my language is German. And if my locale was German and my client language was English, it would also do the wrong thing. Maybe. It seems like Lua is definitely triggering off the language because it's giving me different behaviors, even though my locale hasn't changed. So we looked at that. We looked at the Vindar patch and the Euro normalize functions that are in wide use in the community and are kind of the de facto solution for this problem. So I think this is a good place to pause. And next time we're going to look at French codas, or at least codas in general. What does MinstrelBuffs do with codas? How does it react when you use them? And why does it not seem to be working with French? Because I would love for that to get working as well. Also on the to-do list in my head, sort out which anthems are no longer valid. Remove all traces of them. Yes. For instance, we have in the minstrel effects file, we have anthem of, what do we have? Anthem of the Free People. Pretty sure that's not a thing anymore. So it would be good to go through and figure out which one of these are no longer valid and figure out, is there a way we can kind of strip them out? Awesome. So that's sort of a bigger project and maybe less important to me than the dynamic expansion of the window and showing you whether or not you have a chance to refresh the anthem. Those seem like really exciting things. So we'll kind of play that by ear as it was. All right, so as we approach the end here, if you have any more thoughts, concerns, questions, comments, etc., toss them into the chat here. I'm going to take a drink and look at what Iron Wolf has said. Iron Wolf says, I was looking at skins the other day, and there were a couple that were updated in the last few years. Then the next newest was something like a decade old. Yeah, that is a point. There's a long, long tail of stuff out there that's been produced for Lord of the Rings Online. You know, some games just do not last 15 years, and this one has extraordinary resilience, not unlike a Hobbit. And what I'm curious about is how well do those skins actually work? Can you load them up? Are they valid? Are they just missing things? Are they still fine? I'd be very curious to know to what extent they can work. Because sometimes Turbine and then SSG break things because they can or because they have to, and sometimes stuff just sort of remains. Oh, and Squirrel says, I took some of the older skins and updated them using another more recent one. That's awesome. That's my favorite thing to do as a plugin author, if I can call myself that, as someone who does plugins, is to take something that works from another plugin and borrow it, or at least take inspiration from it. A Little Redhead uses Jrr Skins. I do believe that's one of the more commonly used and probably updated ones. Iron Wolf, I didn't even try the old ones. The recent one was talking about update like 27-ish. Okay. So a problem that SSG has is they have so much stuff that they want to do that adding under the covers things like skinning support if they need to add anything new, and plugin support via the Lua API, anytime they spend time doing that, it means time spent not doing something that the majority of players are going to see right away. For instance, right now I would like them to focus on finishing the design of the new legendary item interface, because I know that's in the works. And right now on my level 60 character on Treebeard, it doesn't matter. My legendary items only got like 4 things slotted in it. But on Evernight, my legendary item, I'm not sure it fits on the screen. Let's see. If I just open this and pull this on down here, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. I think I'm really looking forward to what they can come up with. I would love maybe a multi-column view for this. Just a chance to clean that up. But every minute they spend doing some like skins or plugins is a minute that they don't spend on this. Baz says, easy, buy a bigger screen. My desk is only so big though. I need a more dense screen is what I need, maybe. But right now my 1K monitor will have to suffice. Idolf says, Jrr Skins is the most recently updated. Scroll says, those are great ones. I found some looks from way back and used Jrr to update. Awesome. Love it. Have you had a chance, Squirrel, to publish your updates as a new skin pack, or are they just kind of sitting around on your machine? And Redhead says, maybe someone will get inspired and do some new skins. A lot of great new stuff in the last few years. An Erebor housing one would be amazing. Geodes everywhere on your UI. Iron Wolf says, I tried running UHD Res on my 17-inch laptop. Couldn't get the icons big enough to use. Yes, that is a point that some people have mentioned on higher resolution 2K, 4K monitors, is that because a lot of the assets in this game date back 14 plus years, a lot of these icons are just 32 by 32. And so you can scale them up a little bit in the UI if you come into the options and UI settings. Like, I can scale up the quick slot bars. It's currently at 1.4, so I can go... Wait. It's not scaling. Maybe I'm scaling the wrong thing. Toolbar. Yeah, there we go. I can scale up the toolbar to some degree, but we're just still scaling up those 32 by 32 icons, and so they don't look great, or necessarily they don't look any better on a large screen than you could if you had some newer icon packs that were like 128 by 128, 256 by 256, that kind of thing. And yeah, these bars cap out at 3x. Now, the internal scaling mechanism does not scale out at that. You can actually scale up to 10 times or whatever. But as a UI designer, you have to kind of choose sensible limits for these things, because every time you let someone do something ridiculous, you're inviting a customer support ticket, being like, my bar covers my whole screen and I don't know what I did, because these things happen. Squirrel says, no, I was leery about it since it was someone else's work. I would say, as long as you have attributed, this is based on someone else combined with ideas from Jrr Skins, I don't think that people in the community will mind like if you pass it off as this is 100% my own work, yeah, you might ruffle some feathers. But if you say, I took the best parts of this and threw them together and now you can use them too, I don't think anyone's going to look at that and say, how dare you make a cool thing that people can use. A lot of plugins feel like that as well, where I will say, I don't know how to do a thing, and I'll look at someone else's, like the Aura's plugin for icon scaling, or Thurlore's plugin for figuring out how timers work, and I'll try to reference them in the README, saying, I got inspiration from this person with this thing. In fact, like the dtracker README file is a whole page of that kind of thing, I think. Let's see. Document, plug along, plugins, Cube plugins, it's me, dtracker. If we come into the README file, like special thanks to other plugin authors. This is all just basically places where I lifted a thing on how to do the thing, right? So special thanks, Galahad and Hitbolt Assistant. I cribbed the entire UI for the dtracker off of the Hitbolt Assistant. It's amazing, and it was just clicked those gears in my head. It's like, That's how to do the thing that I want to do. And then I took what the code there was and transformed it into what I needed for the first version, right? Like the D tracker would not exist without Hitbolt Assistant to crib off of. All of these things that are in here are because D tracker would not exist in the format it is without all of these different things, right? So I would encourage you to consider just attributing. Don't take it all as your own. Obviously, you're standing on the shoulders of dwarves, at least, if not giants. Attribute it, call out your thanks to the people in the community, and push it out there. And don't feel bad if other people do the same thing and take what you've done and build on it. That's my opinion, but you can always throw it out into some of the Discord servers and see if anyone else has a differing opinion. Girl says, as long as I attribute it, even if files are under my name, such as when I modified. Okay, thanks. I could probably track that down. Was worried about worried attribution would be missed and would be accused of shenanigans. The very first post I put out on the LOTRO forums about the D tracker was basically, I saw this other cool thing and was like, oh my goodness, maybe I can do something with that. I don't know. Let me see if I can pull that up here as an example. Dun, dun, dun. I think the last thing people in the skins and plugin community would want to do would be to drive someone away just because they didn't do it all on their own, right? That's just unreasonable. The things you can do with Lua are pretty extensive, and having to figure it out all on your own instead of being able to say, hey, this Vindar patch thing works pretty good. Thanks, Vindar. And thanks for all the people who taught me how to use it. So if I go ahead and go to the LOTRO forums, what did I say about this? Wow, that is oddly wide. I was first inspired by the Hitbolt Assistant plugin by Galahad, which gave me a great UI starting point, combined with some inspiration on how to detect completed deeds, right? Literally the first paragraph is, thanks so much to this other person, I took what you did and ran with it. So I think anyone who compares the Hitbolt Assistant UI and the Deed Tracker UI will know exactly what I'm talking about. In fact, if you haven't seen it, Hitbolt Assistant, though less necessary now because the cost of everything is much less than it once was, so it takes a lot less effort to make Hitbolt complete. But if you look at the UI for the Hitbolt Assistant, and then you look at the UI for the Deed Tracker, like there's some similarity there, right? Okay. Iron Wolf, is licensing a thing in the plugin/skin community in LOTRO? All the Factorial mods get to pick a license so you know what you can do with the files. So I don't have a good answer for you other than it's possible the LOTRO interface website, although I've gone to the wiki because I go there so often. The LOTRO interface website might have a note on there about, hey, if you upload stuff here, it is whatever. So that would be the first thing is if I do an upload, check out the FAQ. Is there anything in here? I'm not sure. The organization of stuff on LOTRO interface sometimes baffles me. But that's sort of the first place I would go is to see, does LOTRO interface say things that you submit here are kind of open for the community? Certainly you can choose whether or not people can submit patches on something that you do. But I think the nature of the plugins for LOTRO is that obviously the code is open source. There's no compiling of these things. So people are going to be able to see what you've done. And if you're not comfortable with the idea that someone might look at what you've done and try to build on it, maybe that's not the right place for you, for your code. Baz says, so I was playing around with the loading more and would also break for negative numbers. I have a way for it to work now. I won a useless coding challenge. That's awesome. Ideally, those numbers that we were looking at were screen coordinates. Ideally, we should have some code on there that says your left should never be less than 0, your right should never be bigger than the screen, you should never be above the top, you should never be below the bottom. But that's not necessarily the case, right? Like in Windows itself or in a windowing management system, it's entirely possible, to have a window that is off the left side of the screen. That can be useful, especially in a game that has such constrained space. I would love it if I could drag my character screen half off so I just have the stats over here. But the convention of the game itself is that you don't drag stuff off the screen. I wonder if I can drag a chat window. You can drag a chat window, but it snaps it back onto the screen. So ideally, your XY coordinates shouldn't ever be 0. Iron says, to be honest, there's only one person that famously got bent out of shape for the use of their Factorio mod. The general feeling is, yes, please use and expand. I feel like that's the general consensus in the LOTRO community. At least, that's how I feel about it. And I haven't seen anyone like really vocally alternative. But there, while the plugin developer and skin community isn't necessarily the biggest thing in the world, it might be worth posting on the forums and saying, hey, I have this question about community standards. What do people feel? And just taking a general survey of people who are active on the forums, or on the community Discord servers, that kind of thing. I am just one person shouting into the void here, so don't take anything I say as authoritative. It's my opinion. It may be right. I think it's right, but just because I think it's right doesn't make it so. Baz says, it's fine until you get to a point where someone takes your plugin, changes the name, and says it's their own. Absolutely, that's what I would call plagiarism, right? Like, there's a line between lifting a function and attributing it, saying, or even taking inspiration from a function and changing variable names because of coding standards, whatever. Like those Euro normalized functions, I lifted from the from that how to do plugins for noobs thread that Garen posted. And the first time I lifted it, I was probably conscientious about putting it into the README, but I wasn't necessarily conscientious about putting it into the MinstrelBuffs README. It just slipped my mind right now. So if I were being good about this, I could go ahead and come in and say, hey, oh, we don't need that anymore. We don't need, actually we might. Garen. Oh, I'm not even sure I put it into there. So, you can be well-intentioned, as I tried to be there, and still miss attributions. I think that's kind of the nature of the game, and we try to do our best to attribute ideas like that. But if someone puts code out there, like on the forums like Garen did, and said, this is a solution to the problem, you should use this solution to the problem, and then you do, but you forget to attribute it, I don't think there's any malice in that. Airwolf says, most posts over there that move forward an old mod start by attributing and saying they'll remove it if the original author comes back and updates. Yeah, that seems like a really social way to approach the whole ecosystem. And that sounds like a healthy way to start it out here and, kind of keep an ear out. See if anyone's like, oh no. An example of a recent kind of takeover like that, if you search for travel window, you're actually going to see a bunch of results. Let me sort by date here. Nope, sort the other way. You're going to see, no, the other way. Sorry. You're going to see travel window 2, and you're going to see travel window outdated. You're also going to see travel window and travel windows. But this travel window outdated is probably the one that travel window 2 is replacing. Actually, no, I'm sorry. Travel window here by DH, I'm going to say. 220,000 downloads, but last updated in 2012. So when Hyos came around and made travel window 2 basically forking it and starting updating it again, I think people will see that and say, obviously, the original concept is not Hyos's, but also obviously DH has not been around for a while. Yes, oftentimes there's a category for outdated as well. There we go. Squirrel says, would I consider plagiarism if I took a copy of something and by adding my own name, version, etc. to keep my copies separate, even if I attribute everything I used? Sorry, I'm just thinking about what you've said. Yep. So are we talking skins or plugins? My head's always in plugins. So I think if in your description, at least originally, maybe a year or two down the road, it's not necessary anymore. But I think if your descriptions and your readmes make it kind of clear where your inspiration comes from, you've still done real work by taking something old, fixing it up in accordance with how new things happen. Same thing with Lua files. You'll notice in this opaque quest tracker window, there's a file called Vindar patch. I have written none of this file, unless I put a little note in there. Nope. This is an identical file to other files you will find in other places. Now, the benefit of this is it says Vindar right in the name. You know where it comes from. And in fact, it's like 12 years old now. So thanks so much to Vindar for contributing that to the community. It's amazing. It seems to work great. Even though they say it's dirty, but it seems to work. I agree. It seems to work. But I didn't change that file at all, partially because I wanted it to be seen to be identical to that original file that I lifted. So I did the attribution in the README file, but I didn't change the file that I hoisted into here because it was meant to be used in that way, if that makes sense. Let's see. Scroll says, I was considering a while back when I made these to put together one file like Jrr with my edits. I was thinking more of the Lua files themselves. Baz said then you would do like plugin name -name edit. Iron Wolf suggests you could be a compiler for a set of skins that could be under your name. Yeah, I think there's not one right way forward if you're going to kind of take things and update them. But if there's a skin, and forgive me for not really being in the skin world so much as the plugins, but if I come in to plugins, actually, let me do it in plugins. And if I come to outdated LOTRO interfaces, and I said, you know what really needs updating is the LOTRivia plugin. It's not working right now, but I can make it work. Then I think I would probably make something similar like LOTRivia 2, just like Travel Window is Travel Window 2, right? But I'm guessing if you go into the Travel Window 2 plugin, it's going to refer back to that original one. I'm guessing. This is a 100% replacement for Travel Window. Okay, it does reference that. Travel Window. What else does it say? One of the fun things about plugins is that oftentimes when people take over maintenance of a plugin, take over development of a plugin, they don't change the folder that it ends up in because that just creates more problems than it solves. And so you'll see the Titan Bar plugin under the original developer's name, even though like 3 or 4 different other people have taken it over and kind of let it pass to the side over time. What was I thinking of? Yes? No, because of course I don't know where it is. Travel Window 2, there we go. I'm curious what the README file says for this. Oh, it's in Markdown, nice. Travel Window 2 started out as Travel Window by D. Hicks, right there, or also known as Jrr. Oh, nice. So, first line, attribution, where did this come from? Love it. If you are curious about the lineage of Travel Window 2, this spells it out right there. Right? I feel like that is a great attribution. And a little explanation. Jrr stopped being able to maintain it. It was updated by other authors. This version is an attempt to restart development of Travel Window, keeping it up to date. That sounds like an attribution and a reason why this had to be done by you because the other person couldn't do it, right? Like that's a great example of how to attribute and not come across, hopefully, as a plagiarist. Because taking over maintenance of one of these community projects, that's kind of the nature of the beast, because LOTRO interface doesn't have a mechanism for saying, I'm going to take over this. Each plugin is uploaded under an individual's account, and if that individual wanders away or life befalls them, there's no way to gracefully transition it to another person. except the community standard of download it, re-upload it under your name, and keep going with attribution. So that's what we do. So, like I said, I'm just one person. There are people who've been in the LOTRO plugin game for far longer than I have. So, when in doubt, post on the plugin forums, post on the skins forums if there's a corresponding one like there are plugins. Maybe get the temperature of some other people. But obviously, no one here in chat has spoken up with any ideas other than, yes, this is great. Please contribute back to the community. That's awesome. People are commenting on the idea of a compilation of skins, which absolutely sounds like something that's familiar. If I come on in to, where do I even find things? How does this site work? If I go to downloads, I feel like my computer is still being sad at me for having so many clients open. If I go to downloads and I come on into skins, graphical modification skins, or is it under something else? Compilations? Nope, I just don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to skins. This is a thing. Oh, hey, Little Redhead has helpfully posted a link in chat. Neat. So, LOTRO compilations. So my understanding is that one of the things you can do is when you're submitting something to the LOTRO interface is you can tag it as a compilation. In fact, if I hit the upload and update and I am uploading, I could say a compilation. So let's go ahead and look at a compilation. Does it look any different? I'm not sure. I would have to dig into that. So LOTRO compilations is absolutely a thing. And Jrr Skins collection is in there. I wonder what the description here has to say. Full version history available here. So that would be a thing I could do, is to click on the history, but my goal through this pack is to revive, gather, update, and enhance the most famous LOTRO skins, or parts of skins, originally created and maintained by numerous authors and contributors, since most of the original releases are abandoned and highly outdated. That sounds like a great starting point to attribute a collection of multiple things or modification of existing things. Iron Wolf says there's a section, skin by skin credits. That sounds creepy. I'm going to click on that one. All right. Great discussion on that page. All right, fine. Skin. No. LOTRO compilations. No, the page I was on. Oh, okay. Skin by skin credits. Okay, it's less creepy than it sounded. Okay, excellent. Squirrel. Here is the Jrr Skins, a widely used and widely known skin collection, and how they credit their the things that they pull on in. They've got links going on, they've got names, they've got information. I think that's great. And some global credits down here as well. So maybe that will give you some inspiration on how to stand on the shoulders of those hobbits. Awesome. That's a great discussion. Thanks so much for bringing that up, Squirrel. I hope you feel comfortable throwing what you've put together back into the community, or at the very least, don't feel awkward that you did it in the first place. One of the big things in my head is, are you doing it for fun because you're a member of the community and you're looking to do things, or are you like trying to sell the thing and commercialize on what other people did. And if you're not trying to commercialize on it, if you're just trying to make it better or bring it to a wider audience, I don't think there's any maliciousness in there. LOTRO says, ooh, a musically themed skin for the music community would be really neat. Well, I'm going to leave it at that. This is plugging along, not skinning along, which also sounds creepy. And I am going to go ahead and rescue my computer from the multiple LOTRO clients that are clamoring for attention here. Okay. Exactly, Iron Wolf. Quote from Silence of the Lambs, indeed. Okay. I'm going to leave it there. That's all we're going to cover today. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of LOTRO plugins. I really appreciate you all being here and the great conversations that have been in chat for the last 2 hours and a bit. I do hope to see you again next week when we hopefully finish off this localization stuff and maybe get onto some graphical work. And until then, keep plugging along. All right, bye-bye now.